Hello everybody, welcome to my demonstration of the homebrewing process. This demonstration covers the first part of a full mash. Here I'm adding the grains to the hot water, which is heated to a temperature of 72 degrees. It's important to stir in the grains so that there are no dry lumps. An electronic thermometer is quite useful because a precise temperature ensures an efficient mash. Here I'm looking to have a mash temperature of approximately 65 degrees centigrade. Once you're happy with the temperature, you can put the lid on the mashing unit. The mash needs to take place for approximately 90 minutes. After 90 minutes, you can then start to very slowly drain the grain. You need to do it slowly so as to not to disturb the sediment at the bottom of the unit. What you'll find is that the first drainings from the unit are quite cloudy. These need to be returned to the top of the boiler, and the process of draining continues slowly until the clear liquid is coming from the tap. When the sparging water has reached between 75 and 85 degrees C, you can use it to start rinsing the grains to get all of the sugars through into your bucket. What I'm using here is called a rotating sparging arm. The water that is placed in the boiler at the top of the cupboard flows down the pipe and causes the arm to rotate, spraying out, sprinkling very gently onto the top of the wort. Here we've collected into a homebrew bucket about 25. We've now collected 28 litres of the wort into a homebrew bucket. The next stage is to actually remove the grain bag from the boiler and to give it a clean. Very importantly, you should fit what's known as a hop back to the boiler. This will prevent the hops from blocking up the tap when you eventually drain the wort. Here we're now siphoning the wort into the boiler. You should boil outside because it can be quite a smelly process. This recipe calls for Saaz hops. The Irish moss is used in the boil to help clear the liquid. We're dividing the hops into two quantities. One quantity, the larger one, is used throughout the boil, whereas the smaller quantity is added 15 minutes before the end in order to add aroma. Once your wort is boiling, you add the larger quantity of the hops. Boil time is not... It's interesting to note that home brewing is regarded as cheap. However, you shouldn't forget the heating costs that you need, and also the price of the grain varies according to the harvest. Here we're adding the 5 grams of Irish moss and the remaining hops 15 minutes before the end of the boil. After the boil, you should drain your wort into a clean homebrew bucket. This device is called a wort cooler. It works by passing cold water through a copper coil, which removes the heat from the wort. I'm adjusting the flow of the water through the copper coil to get the optimum heat exchange. You can collect your hot water into another container, which you can then use to recycle, for example for washing up. The outlet part of the coil can get quite warm. In fact, the water is about 40 degrees C when it enters the bucket. Once the water is cooled to about 20 to 25 degrees C, before you picture the yeast, it's a good idea to aerate the water. Here I'm using an electric whisk to do this. For this recipe, I'm using a lager yeast.